Hey, well, what's up? Good morning. It's good to be with you guys. I'm excited to give an actual message today. I was realizing this week that I haven't done, or me or Chandler, well, that's not true. Chandler has because he got to preach in the main service broadcast. But I haven't been able to preach just a message in almost 2 months. I haven't written one since the first week of March, and that's how long it's been. So it's good to be able to give a message. I'm excited to end this Finding Life series that we're in today. Today we're going to be talking about what are we waiting for? How are we waiting? How many of you have ever had to wait for something that you wanted? I think that's pretty much all of us, right? We've all had to wait for something that we wanted. I remember, for me, there was big seasons in life where I really wanted something new to happen. And growing up, it was going from elementary school to junior high school, or from junior high school to high school, or from high school into adult life. All of these things were huge life changes that I knew were coming. And with huge life change when you're young, just means a whole new world of possibilities. You just think anything is possible. I know going from elementary school into junior high, I was looking forward to having lockers and meeting new girls, because it was just this whole new world opened up to me, and it just made me feel older, right? When you're in elementary school, you just want to feel older. You want to start to feel like an adult, and getting into junior high, having lockers and meeting girls was this thing that I felt like was going to make me feel older. And then going from junior high into high school, I think the thing I was looking forward to the most was just getting a new identity. Junior high was a rough 2 years for me. It wasn't a lot of fun. I had fun times, but it was pretty difficult, emotionally difficult, and just who people looked at me as and who they thought of me was just not fun. And so I really needed a new identity. I needed a new life, and I felt like, man, high school was going to give that to me. And then in high school, what I was looking forward to, man, everybody looks forward to graduating high school. They look forward to the graduation day, and I know for you seniors out there, it sucks that you're not getting the end of your senior year like you hoped and dreamed, and like so many others have before you, and will after you. You kind of have this unique situation that is affecting your senior year that you're always going to remember, and in some ways will bond you with graduates all around the world from this point moving forward. But what I looked forward to the most in high school, or I should say to get out of high school, was having choices and freedom, man. When you're in high school, you feel like your life is chosen for you, and everybody's telling you what you have to do and why you have to do it. And I felt like for the first time in my life, after high school was when I was going to be able to be my own person and completely be an individual and be an adult and have freedom and have these own choices, right? And I think that as I look back in my life, both in those seasons and other seasons where I've waited for things, there's good ways to wait and there's bad ways to wait. I think there's a wrong way to wait, but there's also a right way to wait. And I think right now we are all in a waiting season, right? We are all in this season. We are waiting for this stay-at-home order stuff to be done with, to be over with, to go away. I've described this last month and a half as feeling like I've been grounded by the government. I literally haven't felt this way since high school, the last time I was grounded. It's not fun. It's given me flashbacks as a kid to where I remember feeling punished when I didn't do anything wrong, right? And that's kind of what the last 6 months has felt like. Now I get why it's happened and why we've done it, and it's for precautions and to help make the hospitals not overwhelmed and to try to save as many lives as possible. I get the why, but it's still man, it's gotten to the point where this has just been so long, it's hard to not think did I do something to deserve this, what feels like a punishment, right? Because in a way, every single one of us is having to sacrifice the life we were living. Some of us, it's a lot. Some of us, it's not so much. But there's still that sacrifice. And it's why? Why are we giving things up? I didn't do anything wrong. It reminds me a little bit of when I was a little kid and my family and I, we were going to go to Disneyland in the evening. And I think it was for my Nana's company party or something like that. And so we couldn't go until later. And because of that, my mom wanted me to take a nap. And I was like, I don't want to take a nap. I want to go to Disneyland. And I couldn't understand why I had to nap because they told me, no, we're supposed to go to Disneyland. Why do I have to wait? And I yelled and I cried and I screamed and I was frustrated and I just wanted to go to Disneyland. And then I remember this like it was yesterday. And then I remember I guess I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember crying and then all of a sudden opening my eyes and my mom's sitting there going, hey, honey, wake up. It's time to go to Disney. Right? And I was so excited, but man, that time where I had to wait and I was being told to take a nap and I was shut in this bedroom at my grandparents' house, I was like, what did I do wrong? We were supposed to go to Disney. I didn't do anything wrong. I've been good all day like you asked, and now you're making me take this nap. Why am I being punished for something I didn't do? And I think what happens is in these times of waiting, regardless if it's waiting for stay-at-home orders to end or waiting to graduate or go to the next school or for your birthday or for who knows what, I think oftentimes we can think of ourselves more than anyone else in these times, right? Waiting is boring, it's hard, it's difficult, it's unfair, right? And I think that for me right now, something that I've been having to deal with in this season of waiting for the stay-at-home orders to end has been, I've had this heart issue struggle of man, I don't want to wait anymore. I'm done. I want to be out. I'm over being locked up or told to stay home or to be honest with you, not being able to come to church and worship together. As when you're a pastor and that's something that you're called to do. Anytime you plan on doing anything in life, you have this vision that you create in your head and you create expectations, whether or not they're from God, right? And we will take even good things like God's personal calls in our lives and paint pictures of images and expectations of what all that will look like. And it's as soon as it doesn't meet our standard, all of a sudden we're like, God, why? This isn't what you called me to. This isn't what I wanted. And I don't want to blame God. And so I'm find myself getting mad at the government. And anytime a politician gets on TV right now, I don't care who they are, what political party they're from, or anything. I'm just I don't want to hear you. I don't want you to talk to me. I don't want you to mention COVID stuff. I just don't want to hear it. And I've had such a bad attitude, not just towards them, but even people who post and talk about it on social media, regardless of what side they're on, because I'm over this season. I want it to end. And to me, it's I don't care what people talk about. It just seems to be negative. And I'm done. And that's the issue, right? I'm so focused on me and I've been selfish. And I think that if you're honest, you are too. You have been selfish or maybe are being selfish in this season of waiting, or you have been selfish in this season of waiting, or maybe you're living with somebody who's been selfish in this season, right? One thing that I know is that this COVID-19 season this stay-at-home season can help us learn how we can wait, or how we do wait, I should say. And we can learn from how we are currently waiting and how we can be better waiters, on how we can wait for things better. For one thing, we all wait for the things that we all wait for, right? There's one thing that we're all waiting for, right? Last week we talked about it in Revelation 21:4, and this is where Jesus is talking to John. John has this vision where he's caught up to heaven, and Jesus is like, hey, listen, I'm going to wipe every tear away. All the sorrow, everything that causes pain is going to be gone. It's going to be completely gone, right? And I think that in every belief system, regardless of what you believe or what anybody you know believes, everybody wants pain to end, right? I mean, even in the way people are handling this COVID-19 situation, everyone's goal is for pain to end. Now, the way, right, I should say the way that that's done, the way that that's being achieved is not all the same, right? But everybody wants the same thing, the same overall purpose, and that is for the pain to end. We've been given technology and we have science and stuff that have really advanced in medicine and stuff to help ease pain or even delay pain. But at the end of the day, it's not solved pain. No science, no medicine, nothing in all of history has solved pain except for one thing. There's been one evidence of hope that has solved pain, and that is Jesus' resurrection, right? He gave us this promise of no tears. And I think what's amazing about it is it's one to say, hey, man, there's going to be this new creation, this new heaven, this new earth where we're all going to live, and there's going to be no more pain. There's going to be no more suffering. Everything that causes a tear to fall from your eye in a negative way is going to be wiped away. It won't exist anymore. And what's amazing about it is that the person who makes this promise, right? Probably the only person to ever make this promise, and that we can actually believe it, is the person who rose from the dead and helped others to rise from the dead. Someone who has power over death itself, right? The one cause of pain that has never been stopped. Death. And he defeats death. Jesus defeated death. And so, man, I think like that's what we have to look forward to. I think as Christians, as believers, like that's what gives us so much hope is, man, we know life sucks right now. Like everybody in the world agrees with that, right? It's how do we overcome this pain? That's where the disagreement and the disunity and the dysfunction and division comes from in the world. And yet we have somebody who says, no, it will be fixed. And you could even begin to experience that fixed state now and being right with your Creator if you just trust me. And that person that we are asked to trust gave his life for us and then showed us he has power over all this and that we can have hope in him because he's alive to this day, because he appeared to hundreds of people after being dead for multiple days. Man, he made a promise, and Jesus, is a promise keeper, and he's someone that we know we can trust because of what he did, not just on the cross, but how he came out of the grave. And we're going to look at today is what does Jesus say about waiting for this? Waiting for really what we're all waiting for, and that is for all pain to end, right? That's what we want to look at. How do we wait for all pain and suffering to end? Do we just sit around and do nothing? No, we don't, right? So we're going to look at what Jesus says. I just realized I left my Bible off camera, so give me 2 seconds. I got it. That was quick. It was like I never even left the shot. It's totally okay. You might have been scared having to wait for me to come back. How did you wait in that moment? Did you handle it? It's almost like that was planned. Was it planned? I don't know. You'll never know. Maybe you do know. Maybe you think you know, but we're going to move on. We're going to be in Matthew 24, 25, really Matthew 25. And it's in the middle of this conversation that Jesus is having with his disciples. They come to him and they ask him some questions about, hey, when is all this going to happen? Because Jesus just talks to them and says, hey, the temple is going to be destroyed and all this stuff. And they're kind of like, hey, when do we know this is going to happen? Can you tell us how, right? Everybody loves a good forecast. Everybody loves to be able to tell the future and knows what's going to happen so you can plan accordingly. You know, should we go to the beach on that day or shouldn't we? Like, what's the weather going to be like? Is there going to be a war? I don't know. That'd be nice. Jesus, tell us, please. And so in the middle of this conversation and him answering these questions, he starts to go in to talk about really his second coming, when he's going to come back and what that is going to look like. And he tells three parables, or he tells a few parables, and we're going to look at three of them. In Matthew 25, verses 1 through 13, this is the parable of the 10 virgins, and I'll just read it real quick. It says, at that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 of them were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps but did not take any oil with them. The wise ones, however, took oils in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was a long time in coming, and they became drowsy and fell asleep. At midnight, the cry rang out, "Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps, and the foolish ones said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil. Our lamps are going out." "No," they replied, there may not be enough for both us and you. Instead, go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." But while they were on their way to buy the oil, the bridegroom arrived, and the virgins who were ready went in with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the others came out. "Lord, Lord," they said, "open the door for us." But he replied, "Truly I tell you, I don't know you. Therefore keep watch, because you don't know the day or the hour." Right? I think a lot of times We want to know when something's going to happen exactly so we can prepare in the last moment. I think Jesus is speaking a little bit to the procrastinators in his group of disciples at this point. And as a disciple of Christ, like, I'm for sure a procrastinator, and I'm actually not even like getting hit by it until just in this moment. I feel like the Holy Spirit wanted me to be convicted live in front of you right now. But he's just getting out like, no, you. It's not about when it'll happen, but just that it will happen. And I don't know when it's going to happen, and you don't know. Only the Father knows. So you just better be ready, right? You need to be ready, and you can't borrow preparedness. You need to be prepared for when Jesus comes back, and or for when your life ends and you meet him face to face, right? You need to be ready. You can't borrow preparedness, right? Imagine showing up to a wedding and not being prepared for it, right? And not being ready for it. I mean, this is culturally what Jesus is describing here is like hugely offensive. It'd be like today, the wedding party, right? Like the bridesmaids and the groomsmen showing up to the wedding, and half of them not having their tux, never having picked up their tuxes to rent, or the bridesmaids having their dresses or makeup or whatever, and then the wedding's about to start, and they're like, hey, you need to go get your own stuff. Go get your own things so you can be in the wedding. And as they take off, the wedding starts, and at that point, like, they've missed it, right? They can't come back in, and then they show up late, and they expect to come in. Like, they just walked out on the wedding. That'd be hugely offensive. If you have your wedding and you ask people to be in it, and then they just like don't care to put the effort in to do what it takes to be a part of it, and then show up for the party after, you're probably not going to let them in. You're probably going to be pretty upset. Maybe you'll make it up to them later, but they're not making it into that wedding, and that's what Jesus is getting at here. You need to be ready at all times. You can't just wait till the last moment. I remember I actually showed up late to a wedding once, and like walking in with me and a couple of my friends, and this was like one of the first weddings I went to as an adult, like without my parents holding my hand, and walked in, and the bride was like standing there in her dress about to go down the aisle, and I realized, oh my gosh, they're in the middle of procession, and she kind of looked at us like very kindly and sweetly, and if she wasn't a Christian, she probably would have just said, don't come to our wedding, leave. But she's like, go around the side, you'll be fine. She was super kind. It looked amazing. I remember I told Jill about it, and she like lost her mind. She's like, you showed up late, and you walked in, and you saw the bride before everybody else, and yeah, it wasn't a good situation. Being late to a wedding is not great. Not being prepared for a wedding banquet isn't great. And it's huge. And it's really a small example of what Jesus is getting at, of what it'll be like to not be prepared for when he comes back, or for when it's our time, when our time is up in this world. We have to take ownership of ourselves. There's things, I think, that make people think they're prepared for when Jesus comes back, right? I'm an American, so I'm a Christian, so I'll be fine. I'll go to heaven when I die. Or I've been mostly good, or I was raised in the church. I was raised a Christian, going to church, and so, or I go to church, and I've been to church, so I'm sure I'm prepared, right? But association with the prepared does not equal prepared, right? We have, half of these virgins are there, they're associating, they're expected to be a part of this situation, right? And they're associating with those who get in. But that doesn't allow them to get in. I've heard people say, oh, so-and-so in my family is a pastor, and so I'm good, I'm set. Like, you're not getting in off of your family members' backs or someone else's back, or maybe you marry somebody who's a Christian. You need your own faith. You need your own lamp and your own oil. You have to be prepared for yourself. You have to be responsible for yourself. You're not responsible for anybody else's judgment of how they lived and how they waited in this life. You're only responsible for you, right? Being physically present in church or in Christian culture doesn't mean you have an actual relationship with Jesus. Remember, what he says here is, in the parable, is that the bridegroom doesn't know, the groom doesn't know them. I don't know you. Who are you, right? It's the same thing as going to a concert. You don't know the concert, right? If you just go to church, that doesn't mean you know Jesus. Even if you go every week and have been going every week your whole life. Doesn't mean you know Jesus. You can go to every Taylor Swift concert in the world. You don't know her. She doesn't know you, right? We need to wait with a faith that won't run out. We need to be ready and wait with a faith that won't run out. We need to have an actual relationship with Jesus. And what have you done in this life where you have waited and spent time getting to know Christ? Wait with a faith that won't run out. Spend time getting to know Christ. This next parable that we're going to dig into here, starting in verse 14, is the parable of the bags of gold or silver or talents, as it might be called in yours. And I'm going to just summarize this one a little bit. He gives a couple servants more amounts, and he gives just one bag. And the ones who are given more, all of them double there's this landowner, right, or king and master, and he gives his employees essentially, hey, I'm going to give you this much money to be responsible for my business. Take care of it, do work with it, be responsible, right? And all of them double it except for the one who was given one bag. And all he did was just go and bury it. It tries to play it off with, in verse 24, he says, the man who received one bag of gold came and said, Master, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and hid gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. And his master replied, in verse 26 of Matthew 25, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have at least put my money on deposit with the banker, so when I returned, I would have received it back with interest, right? In other words, there's this expectation of even if you're scared, you should have done something with it, right? The expectation isn't that everybody needs to double their faith, right? If I'm a believer, I make 2 other believers, right? But that you do something with it, that you try. Instead, he sort of rejects the responsibility and says, hey, thanks for this great gift, this good news, but I'm just going to bury it and ignore it because you're scary and I don't want anything to do with it, right? Like, we need to do something with what we've been given is what Jesus is getting at. So often we think of waiting as just sitting, being passive, not doing anything. No, faith is about waiting actively. Being a Christ follower is about waiting actively. When we talk about waiting for Jesus to come back and waiting for all the pain to end, right? What everybody is waiting for, like, we need to wait actively. It's not just about, I'm just going to sit in church and listen to sermons and I'm just going to pray and that's going to be enough. No, we need to wait actively. Think about it. Pro athletes right now in this season where pro sports are shut down, it's not like they're just sitting on the couches. And the ones that are going to come back and get injured, or they're not going to be in shape to play. Or they may not even get to play because they're going to be so out of shape, right? Or they're going to fall apart and maybe lose contracts, or who knows. But the good athletes in the world right now, the professional athletes, they're still training. They don't know when they're going to start playing again, but they have to practice and train every single day as though the next day is the day that they need to come back, right? That they're going to be able to play again. I started watching this documentary that ESPN's been running right now about the early 90s Bulls, Michael Jordan's Bulls. And it's a documentary on kind of that whole era of Michael Jordan and the Bulls, but really focusing in on their last season together when they won their final championship. And the show's called The Last Dance. And there's, in one of the, I think the second episode or whatever, it gets into how the Bulls could never get past the Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. And just finally, Jordan just got so upset. And the Pistons were known as this huge physical team that would literally beat you down. And they just showed Jordan getting beat up and beat up and beat up. And so that whole offseason, he got him and the whole rest of the Bulls team to basically start hitting weights more than they ever have, to beef up, to be able to become more physical than the Detroit Pistons so that way they could overcome and beat them. They were training for something that was ahead. They were waiting actively, right? There's an expectation from Christ that we are supposed to do something in this life while we wait. And so do something with the life that you were given for the one who gave it. God gave you this life. You did nothing to earn it. He gave it to you. And so what are you going to do with the life that you were been given? Some of us have been given more responsibilities and maybe more abilities than others, but it's not about you comparing to everybody else. It's what are you doing with what have you been given? And it's not even really about what you end up bringing back or what your return is in this life or how much success you have. It really is like you're graded on effort. Have you tried to live for God? Are you trying to live for God? Have you tried to follow Christ? That is it. Just do something with the life that you were given for the one who gave it. And what do we do exactly? Well, as we look in this last parable that we're going to look at in 25, 31 through 46, it's the parable of the sheep and goats. And it's a little bit long, so bear with me, but I do want to read through this one. It says, when the Son of Man, so Jesus teaching his disciples again, he's telling them this parable. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And so Jesus is now talking about and using an object lesson or an illustration that they're very familiar with, a shepherd separating sheep and goats. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat, and I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink, and I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me, and I was sick, and you looked after me. And I was in prison, and you came to visit me. And then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry, or feed you, or thirsty, and give you something to drink? When did we see a stranger invite you in, needing clothes, and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? And the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. And then he says to those on the left, depart from me, you who are cursed. And he says, you didn't do any of these things for those who, you didn't feed me when I was hungry. You didn't give me anything to drink when I was thirsty. You didn't clothe me when I was naked. You did none of this for me. And they asked the same thing, when did we see you this way? And he responds the same way, whatever you did not do for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did not do for me. Man, there's a lot in here, but the least of these are the family of his. He's talking about his followers. So whatever people do not do for those who follow Christ, if people actively, intentionally reject, right, Christ followers and caring for them, basic needs, right? We're talking about basic humanitarian, like social justice work here. If you choose to not serve somebody because they're a Christian, like, then you're essentially looking at Jesus and being like, I don't want anything to do with you. And that's what he's getting at right here, right? Because Jesus says, the least of these are these brothers and sisters of mine. In other words, implied his family, his followers. And what Jesus is echoing here, he's echoing some of the Old Testament stuff, which his disciples who were Jews got to be hearing this, right? Jews took care of these types of people. It was in the law of Jews to care for those who are hurting, those who are sick, to care for foreigners and sojourners in their land, right? Jews took care of these people. And so Jesus is speaking to a rejection of not just him and his Christ followers, but really a rejection of their very own law. If you don't do the basic things that we're calling you to do, and you specifically choose not to do it for Christ followers, then you're done. You're cursed. You're not going to be blessed. You're going to be cursed. In Luke 10:16, Jesus is sitting down with his disciples, and he tells them, hey, when people reject you, it's not you that they're accepting or rejecting, it's me that they're accepting or rejecting. And the truth is that people are going to discriminate against Christians. And maybe you've been there. Maybe you've hated Christians. Maybe you're someone, whether you were raised in a Christian home or not, you've just looked at Christians and you just felt like they're fake or not real or hypocritical. And the truth is we can be. And I like to think that most Christians most of the time know that we are, right? The only difference between a Christian and someone who isn't is that Christians know that they're sinful and they know they make mistakes and they're trusting Christ for that forgiveness. That's it. And hopefully, as Christians, we're working on it actively. We're waiting actively to become more like Christ. And so what we're called to do, the way we're called to wait actively, is to show our love of Christ by showing the love to his followers. And so what are you waiting for? Wait with a faith that won't run out. Wait with a faith that doesn't just give up because it's difficult or hard, or you begin to just focus on yourself too much, right? Wait positively, wait actively by giving your life to the one who gave it, right? Give your life as a servanthood to God, to Christ, and show that you're giving your life to him by showing love to his followers and his church. I mean, it's that simple. That's what it's about. What are you waiting for in this life? And I think really, how are you waiting in this life? And if you're not sure, look at how you've handled waiting for the stay-at-home order to end. Have you made it about yourself and how it's affected you, like I know I've been struggling with? Or have you made it about what God can use this and how God can use you in this season? And how you can still love the church and serve others around you? What are you waiting for? Let's pray. God, I just thank you for this message. I thank you for the promise that we have that we can wait for. The promise that there will be no pain. God, and that you show that promise is one that we can lean on and depend on as a guarantee because you defeated death. God, you rose from the grave through your son, Jesus. And I just thank you for that hope that you give us and that promise that you give us that we will experience that ourselves. God, I just pray that you help us to see the ways and that we wait in this life selfishly. And even in whether it's waiting for no tears, God, help us to see even in the small ways when we wait for little things. Help us to not be selfish. God, help us to be people as Christians who care for each other. God, as people who just care for people, God, but as people who live for you, the one who gave us this life and gave us the promise that we will have eternal life. God, help us to live lives that are waiting for a blessing and not a curse. Thank you for your patience with us in that, and thank you for loving us no matter what. In His name we pray. Amen. I'm not sure how we're going to transition out of this. But I'll just say this. Thank you guys for watching today. And I'll pray that your waiting is going good and that you continue to wait well during this season. If there's anything you need, man, please reach out to us so that we can be there for you guys. We love you all. Have a blessed week. Peace out.